week.
All right. Well, I was going to go over the confined space again. We did this once, but this is another version of it. That's what happened to send me this week. So confined spaces like basements, attics, crawl spaces, utility vaults, silos, they're not built with your comfort in mind. So obviously they can be uncomfortable to work in and very difficult to enter and exit. Permit required confined spaces contain specific hazards that are particularly dangerous. If there is a confined space on the job site, you need a competent person to evaluate the space and determine if it is permit required, if there is a permit required space. A confined space permit is sort of like a required JSA or a safety plan that spells out the hazards in the space and how they will be controlled. So every job site is different, and every time you have to work in a confined space, the hazards will be different. Here's a list of some of the hazards that you find in confined spaces. Toxic gases and vapors, chemical contact, electrical hazards, being crushed by and caught in hazards from moving parts and equipment, extreme temperatures, engulfment, entrapment, and drowning, welding, burning, and open flames, falls, wildlife, including snakes and venomous spiders. In the space, the entry supervisor must also act as the attendant, depending on the situation. Attendants stay outside of the confined space. They keep in contact with the worker inside and often monitor air quality. And if they say to evacuate, that means get out immediately. So be familiar with the rescue plan, whether you're an attendant or an entrant. The rescue plan shouldn't just be call 911 because local responders might not have the right equipment to quickly rescue someone from a confined space. An important part of the plan is how to get someone out of the space, especially if that person is unconscious. As a general rule, your coworkers can't go into the space to rescue you if something goes wrong. Frequently, you'll need to wear a harness that's connected to a retrieval hoist when you work in a confined space so you can be hoisted out if you can't get out by yourself. When you're in a confined space, the PPE, personal protective equipment, you wear can save your life. If the permit requires a respirator or a retrieval harness, make certain you wear them. Don't take them off, even for a second, while you're in the confined space. Participate in confined space training if it's offered. The more you know, the better you can avoid accidents. So I'm going to just say, and Iggy kind of knows a little bit about this. When I worked for another company called New Flow, they did sewer linings, and there were occasions that they had to go down into the street sewer. So you lift the manhole up, you go down. That's a confined space. So what kind of gases are down there? Methane, right? So methane gases are down there, but you're required, if someone were to go down there, they had to have a harness on, and so that was one of the things. And usually you had to have two-way communication, walkie-talkies or something else. Typically, they didn't want you to even go down there. Most of the time they could do stuff from up above. They had tools that they could reach down and pull a line up, and then they basically float a bag from the clean out at the customer's house that they're going to be putting a liner in. And they'd have a hook and they'd lift that up, and they normally wouldn't have to go down there. But there were occasions that had to happen. And that's just one type of confined space. But they would go down there and they have to have a harness on, they have to have someone up on top to be able to communicate to them. Supposed to wear a respirator. And I'm telling you, there were times those guys didn't do that and they risked their own lives. Because the methane gas is down there, it doesn't take long. If you don't have enough airflow and everything else, because what you're supposed to do before you go down there is not just have a harness, that's just part of it. The other part is having breathable air or wearing a respirator, and you're only allowed to wear a respirator for a certain amount of time because the filters that are in the respirators don't last that long, so you can't be down there for extended periods of time. But typically you have to have a system that throws air down and sucks the bad air up and exhausts it on the other end. So there's a lot of things that have to happen to be safe that people don't do. They just take for granted It's no big deal, I'll just go down in the hole. Well, that's the kind of stuff that kills people or can injure somebody. That's just one type of confined space. There's a ton of them. Sometimes it's working in trenches that are just anything over 5 feet is considered a confined space. You have to have a ladder that comes up and gets out. You have to have someone, again, making sure that the dirt is back at least 3 feet from the edges, depending on the type of soil. There's all kinds of things. We don't do a lot of that stuff, but just don't take for granted. If you ever think that you're in a position where something is not safe, even believe it or not, and this is something that I heard from another company I used to work for, ARS, and somebody did basically work in a trench, and they basically were working in the trench for a sewer pipe, and it was about, I want to say, from what I remember correctly, around 7 feet deep. When they dug the hole, the trench, it was a big trench with a tractor. They had the sewer pipe kind of did this little jog, and it was the part that they had to repair was not only 7 feet down, it was not in the trench completely. The part was kind of underneath, so they had to kind of undermine a little bit, all right? So they were undermining, and they had the tractor was only like maybe 5 feet away from the hole. But as they're undermining, they got about 2 feet in there, so now they're about 3 feet. They got this, however much that thing weighed, a couple thousand pounds, right? More than a car, sitting there, and they're digging underneath at this 7-foot hole. And the thing started collapsing on them while the guy's down there. I mean, it's just, you don't realize how much dirt weighs, but it is really heavy. I mean, it's like, I forgot what the numbers were, but I remember they told us it was something like, I think it's for every cubic yard, it's like 2,000 pounds. I mean, it's like a Volkswagen, just being dropped on you. And that's not very much, doesn't look like very much dirt, but it's heavy as hell. So the bottom line is, they didn't have a way to get the guy out. They didn't have a ladder there. They didn't have a competent person. So they actually got fined because OSHA came out and fined them. And it was a pretty big fine. And that's when they started doing all this OSHA training all the time. They were coming out and certifying everybody, making them competent person training is what they called it. And basically what that does is it's a 4-hour class, I think. And basically what it does is it makes everyone aware and responsible and understanding that you can't just leave. And the other thing that happened in this thing is that the guy was there by himself because the supervisor or whoever was on the job went to go do something else and left the site. So the guy almost could have died. He got back, someone helped him, he was screaming, as the thing started collapsing. He got out, but it wasn't a competent person that helped him, it was somebody else nearby that really wasn't even part of the team. Damn. So they learned all kinds of things from this, and I learned it too because I went through the training. And they basically require in those situations to have a second person who's a competent person, meaning they understand all the rules and you have to have a way out and a plan if something were to happen. And you don't undermine like that when you have any kind of weight near that type of, especially if same thing with dirt. If you're putting dirt right close to the edge and you're not 3 feet away, and that means 3 feet away from what's been undermined too. You can't like undermine and have it 3 feet and then go 2 feet in. Now there's so much pressure that it can just collapse on you. So there's a lot of little things you learn, the types of soils, the A, B, and C type. There's all kinds of differences between them and how you need to dig your trench. Sometimes you dig a trench like this, and you're only trying to, this is all you're really worried about is a small little section, but you have to dig it at almost like a V because you don't want dirt to, collapse in on you. So there's a lot of things you have to learn. But if you ever have a question about a job that you're on and you don't feel that something's safe or whatever, you need to let us know. And I don't want any of you guys getting hurt, so it's important to me. This is a training we'll probably offer this year, but we've got to have somebody who's certified to train the class to come in and do that, and we have to pay for that. So that's something that if we start doing any type of work like this, a confined space can also be an attic. Because a crawl space, a lot of times you go underneath the house in a crawl space, if there's no air in there, you at least have to have air brought in and air, the bad gas or the bad air coming out, good air coming in, kind of a circulation type of thing. And sometimes wearing respirators or whatever, so you're protecting yourself and your coworkers. Okay. So anyway, that's just something I wanted to bring up on there. Everybody could sign. I'll pass this around. Hopefully somebody's got a pen with them because I didn't bring one in. I'm going to ask a couple of questions over here while we're passing it around. So, which of these statements about confined spaces is incorrect? Okay. A, examples of confined spaces include attics and crawl spaces. B, confined spaces may be difficult to enter and exit. C, confined spaces can be uncomfortable. D, permit required confined spaces don't present any serious hazards. D. If it requires a permit, that means that that it's probably a real good thing to have somebody, a competent person there, and make sure that you understand all the safety rules. Probably have a harness if needed, if it's down below, whatever the case is. Having air in and out, all that good stuff. True or false? You are exposed to the same hazards every time you enter any confined space.
True.
False.
False. Because every job site is different, so, and every time you have to work in a confined space, the hazards will be different. A lot of attics that we work in, we typically work in, we don't have a confined space issue. You can walk around in them, you know, there's usually air up there, there's venting, a lot of stuff like that, but there are places that you can go into, attics that have no venting and no air. I mean, you couldn't even light a match in there, there's not enough oxygen. That's the kind of stuff that could hurt you. What do confined spaces, what do confined space attendants do? A, they enter the confined space. B, they are always in charge of the confined space. C, they keep in contact with workers inside and monitor air quality. Or D, they do the same job as the competent person.
C.
C. She got it, she must have been listening. Okay, so, because attendants stay outside of the confined space, they're the ones who keep in contact with the workers and make sure they monitor air quality, okay? That's what the attendant does. That's what an attendant means someone who's staying there, observing and making sure everything's correct. True or false? As a general rule, your coworkers can't go into the space to rescue you if something goes wrong.
True.
Quote, true. As a general rule, your coworkers cannot go into a space to rescue you if something goes wrong. That's why there's a harness. If they were to go in there, they need to be trained to go in there. They need to have proper equipment. They need to know, because first of all, if someone's down there and all of a sudden you're trying to talk to them in the walkie-talkie and now you don't hear them anymore, they're not speaking, do you know if they could be unconscious? And they could be unconscious in something you don't know what the reason is. Is it because of a gas? Did something collapse on them? I mean, you need to know what the reason is. And a lot of times, just going down there yourself could just put yourself in the same danger that they're in, right? So that's why there needs to be a plan to get them out. And sometimes it could mean having even an ambulance on site or some medics that know what the situation is, or a specialist in some cases. You know, we don't have to deal with that much, but that is a true thing. So, which of these actions is a safe work practice to follow if you are working in a confined space? A, being familiar with the rescue plan. B, wearing a harness that is connected to a retrieval hoist. C, leaving the confined space immediately if the attendant says to evacuate. D, all the above.
All the above.
All the above. So, because if they say to evacuate, you got to get out immediately. Be familiar with whatever the rescue plan is, whether you're the attendant or an entrant. And frequently, you'll need to wear a harness that's connected to a retrieval hoist when you work in a confined space, so you can be hoisted out if you can't get out by yourself. And that's even, and sometimes in trenches, if you have a trench that's large enough and they need to get you out quickly, I mean, it might yank your butt up, but guess what? It's going to save your life. So. But we've seen, they show in that class, in that training class, they show some actual, and they're normally big commercial jobs, okay? That's normally when these things happen. When you're working in the street, for an example, and they're down, 10 feet, 12 feet, whatever, in a trench, right? But they show actual examples of people who have, on job sites, construction sites, that have been caved in on and died. I mean, they show real life reenactments and what happened and how they had to get them out and stuff like that. So some people lose limbs, some people die. Even if you get from your knees down, for an example, get collapse with dirt, you may think, well, hey, I'm able to breathe, da 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 da. Well, you can still die from that because the pressure on your legs can cause basically lose your circulation. So not only lose your legs, but then that can cause blood clotting and all kinds of medical issues that you don't even realize could have happened. So there's a lot of things, and they kind of go through that and explain what happened to certain people, and they thought he would make it because it was his legs and he was able to breathe. It didn't crush his lungs and all that. Well, the guy still died. So that's real life stuff. So just take it seriously if you guys ever get into that. All right, so again, payroll. I need everybody's timesheets in for last week if you worked, and get those in. Let me see what else. Basically, same thing. Make sure I get all your invoices, purchase orders. I mentioned this last week, but there wasn't very many people here. All invoices have to be turned in and have to be put into the system. So make sure that the dollar amounts are accurate. So when I'm looking them up, I don't have to, search. We're in a brand new year now, 2020. We want to keep our books and everything going correctly. We're still working on the kinks. Everything from Service Tech is being put into House Call Pros, the new software. So that's, basically it still may be sometime in the middle of this month before we actually get into that. But once they have everything over there, that way you'll be able to look up your invoices and pictures and all that. They're able to do that, but they had to kind of create a program to do that, to be able to, from the backup, put it all onto House Call Pro. It's an SQL file or something like that. So anyways, they're doing that and they're still working on it. And once I get that going, we'll start training on House Call Pro. But besides that, invoices, making sure they're accurate, making sure you turn them in with your timesheets, write the name and of the customer as well as the job number, just in case one of them's a little. I don't care if it's misspelled. I can at least look it up that way. But a lot of the paperwork I did even last week, the purchase order numbers that are on the purchase orders or on the invoices are incorrect. So it could be off by one number, but I'm like, or be missing a number, or there's an extra number, or whatever. So if you have the name and the number on there, it's going to make it. You can just handwrite the name on. You don't have to do that when you go to, the purveyor. And again, like I said last week, AC Pro now we have a $5,000 limit. Doesn't mean just stock your trucks, but we do have the limit on there. You still have to turn the invoices in. Still have to have the invoices on there. We're still primarily using Geary Pacific. That's for all, especially all equipment. If we need to get certain smaller things from AC Pro, that's kind of what that's for. And we still have the Ferguson thing as well. So that's all going well. Our new website has finally. We're doing the first revisions this week. They've already sent it to us, and Tina and I have gone through it. It's more of the customized website, and it will have a lot better search engine optimization, so we'll be higher up on the list once we make that live. It shows the reviews on it, and I'll show you guys that hopefully next Monday, I believe, because we have a meeting on Thursdays when we're going over everything. So if they're done by Monday, or maybe sometime next week, I'll be able to show you guys what that looks like. So I think it's a lot easier to navigate. It's actually pretty nice, and it looks really good on the phone, as well as on the computer. So even if people are going on their phone and looking for us, it'll look better. I think that's it. I think we have mostly everybody except for Renars. I think Renars has stuff scheduled, but it's not for the repipe. Everybody else is going to be doing repipe stuff today, from what I understand. I'm not sure how much got done on Saturday. But that's what the plan was, at least as of Friday, that everyone's going to be there today. So that's all I have. Yeah.
Geary Pacific for
Yeah, we're
equipment,
going with you.
they do not have an 80% variable furnace
Okay.
from Amana or Goodman.
Okay.
They only have it in the high percentages.
All right. Well,
Like
if
a
we have
90,
if we have to
80
get something like that from HC Pro because the Geary Pacific doesn't have it, we can do that. I mean, I know that makes it a pain, but if anything else that you can get from Geary, please get from Geary.
Yeah, I was just letting you guys know that Amana does not have 80% variable. They do have a constant torque, which is still an ECM, but it's not a constant CFM profile. It's
Okay,
kind of
yeah,
a force
as long as, you know, Kevin knows about it as well, and then, you know, we'll bring it up to them and find out if that's coming or what the deal is, I don't know.
It's gonna be coming across all product lines, just a matter of them getting
Okay.
everything out.
I know I'm gonna be gone January, I think it's 22nd through 25th. It's like Wednesday through Friday, because I'm gonna go to their plant in Texas. And they're gonna show me how to, you know, what they do and how they make the products and all that, so I'll, if they don't have anything by then, I'll get that information from you, Mike, and find out when I get
You
back.
need a personal
guys will know.
assistant?
No. All right, guys, let's go get to it.